Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I'd like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of March 29th, 2023. The City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington Open Public Meetings Act. Community members are welcome to join either in person, remote, via Zoom, or by calling in. For those who wish to participate in the future on Zoom, you'll find the instructions to register for public comment on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Please note we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Vice President Tui.
Here.
Councilmember Fossey.
Here.
Councilmember Schwab.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
Here.
President Stonecipher.
Here. Vice President Tui, would you please lead us in the flag salute? And Councilmember Zarlingo, would you please read the land acknowledgement this evening?
I'd be happy to. This council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Snohomish people, and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they've hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection to the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes of March 22nd?
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Abstain.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Abstain.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Franklin.
Good evening, Council President and Council members. I would like to invite Chief Templeman forward so that we can swear in 2 new officers this evening. Thank you.
All right, good evening, Mayor Franklin and council members. It's my privilege tonight to be able to introduce to you our 2 newest graduates from the Basic Law Enforcement Academy. And so I'd like to start with Derek Setter and his son. Derek was raised in Clearview, Washington, and graduated from Chrysalis High School in Woodinville. In 2009, Derek enlisted in the United States Air Force as a security forces member, where he was stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Great Falls, Montana. The first 2 years of his career were working in nuclear missile security, followed by a deployment to Saudi Arabia in 2011. Derek was then selected to work at a military correctional facility and was trained in prisoner transport over commercial airlines. During his time in Montana, Derek also served in search and rescue operation. Derek's time in the military instilled in him a desire to serve, and he made the decision to become a police officer so he could continue to support the community and make a positive difference. Derek selected Everett PD because of the department leadership and said it was very clear from the beginning of his hiring process that EPD cares about its officers and employees and wants to see them succeed. Derek graduated from the Basic Law Enforcement Academy on March 28th and looks forward to meeting more of his coworkers and community members. Derek believes if he can make a positive difference in even one person's life over the course of his career as a police officer, he would consider it a successful career. Derek and his wife Clancy have been married for 4 years and have 2 small children. In his spare time, Derek enjoys riding motorcycles, welding, barbecuing, and spending time with friends and family. Thanks. I'd now like to introduce Will Stryker. Will was raised in Burien, Washington. And growing up, Will demonstrated leadership early, achieving the rank of Eagle Scout. Later, he volunteered with the King County Explorer Search and Rescue. He graduated from Central Washington University in 2020 with a bachelor's degree in political science and has finished his first year of his master's degree in law and justice. Will also served as a member of the Washington National Guard for the last 6 years, and he's currently a first lieutenant. Will graduated from the Basic Law Enforcement Academy on March 13th. He decided to become a police officer because of his desire to problem solve community issues and engage with Everett residents. Will specifically chose to work for the Everett Police Department because the officers he interacted with during the background process demonstrated a genuine interest in getting to know he and his family before he was hired. Actually, Will graduated from the academy on the 14th, right? Yep. As he starts his field training program, Will is most looking forward to being involved with the community and putting his training into practice. Will and his wife Madeline are newlyweds and looking forward to married life. In his spare time, Will loves hiking, camping, paintball, and reading. And as I always like to acknowledge when introducing our new officers, just the importance of family. And as you can see here tonight, both of these new officers have quite a bit of family support, which I always say is vitally important and absolutely necessary if you're going to spend the next 20 to 25 years in this profession. So thank you for being here, family, and for your support of your new officers. And so I present to you Derek Setter and Will Stryker for swearing in. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to accept William Stryker and Derek Setter as the newest members of the Everett Police
So
Department?
moved.
Seconded.
A motion and a second. Any questions or comments before we take the roll? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Vice President Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Now the clerk will administer the oath.
So please raise your right hand and repeat after me. Make sure I got the right hand. I, please state your name,
I, William Stryker, I, Derek Setter,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I am either a citizen of the United States or a lawful permanent resident,
that I am either a citizen of the United States or a lawful permanent resident,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Everett,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Everett,
and that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
and that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
perform the duties of police officer of the city of Everett
perform the duties of the police officer of the city of Everett
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities. So
So help me God.
help me God.
Congratulations.
Passing it down.
So welcome to our two new officers, and again, thank you to the family that's here supporting them. And just a comment that I will have to leave early this evening, and I have no, apologize to the staff that are presenting, but no further comments, thank you.
Thank you. Angie, do we have anyone signed up for public comment this evening?
We have a potential public commenter here in chambers for item number 10. So depending on the briefing, she may or may not have a comment. And then we have a written comment that we received from Michael Wallace, which has been provided to council, administration, and clerk to be part of the permanent record.
Very well, thank you. And if I forget at item 10, please jog me.
Sorry, one moment. Just one moment. Paula? Okay, so we have Paula here to speak, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Please state your full name and city of residence, and go ahead.
Thank you.
My name's Paula Townsell. I'm a resident of District 3 here in Everett. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I was so moved by our 2 new officers coming on tonight that I needed to. I did observe the flags at half-mast outside. We know why those are flying at half-mast, and I have to recall that my 23-year-old son was able to get a grant nationally from March for Our Lives when he was 19 years old, so we could hold the largest politically motivated protest in the city of Everett, where we had over 3,000 people marching, as my husband says, over 6,000 boots on the ground. It was big and it was important then. It just remains so important today. It remains important here in Everett, and I am so thankful for this council paying attention. I was pleased last week to hear the briefing on the budget and to hear the police department asking for $50,000, doubling their request for the gun buyback program because it was so successful. I encourage you, when the budget comes before you, to remember today, to remember what we've been through in this city with our police officers and our students, and to do that and more because it matters for all of us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paula. And that's all we have for now.
Thank you. We will move on to council comments and liaison reports, starting with Councilmember Zarlingo.
Thank you. Couple of quick notes, one of them with respect to Chief Templeman and his recruiting team and their success in bringing people, new officers to Everett. I want to express my gratitude that way, not only for their recruiting work, but also for leading and organizing a department that these recruits find attractive to come and serve in. I really, really appreciate that. And also a note about last night I attended the Pinehurst Beverly Park neighborhood meeting, an active group and consistently active. I think that I applaud their involvement that way. We got a briefing from a safety officer with the Everett School District. And I want to congratulate them on some work with respect to school safety, more relevant than maybe they thought it would be when they identified that speaker, but also their efforts to use a whole spectrum of avenues to get parents in the community aware when there are school danger incidents. So congratulations to them on that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Congratulations to our 2 new officers, Officer Stryker and Officer Sutter. I know that they are in good hands here at the city, so appreciate everybody's work with our recruitment team. I got in late last night from the National League of Cities conference. Flew in pretty late, and boy, are my arms tired. It was a really amazing experience, as it always is. It was really informative to hear directly from federal organizations like Commerce, HUD, White House Hunger and Nutrition Team, Department of Labor, Department of Agriculture, and of course, we got to hear from the First Lady of the United States, Jill Biden, about the importance of community colleges and pathways to apprenticeships and trades. And so I have a long list of federal grants available that I will be sending to the mayor and her administration to take a look through, and hopefully we can use some of that work, some of that information to bring dollars to the city. It was also great too to have the reverse of it. So me providing information to representatives from these federal organizations. Had a chance to talk with a leader at the Department of Labor. They have a big push right now for workforce development for young people. And so you got to share about the work that we're already doing here in Everett with youth workforce development through places like Snow Isle Tech Center and our local community colleges and apprenticeship programs. So it was great to be able to put that on the Department of Labor's radar. So hopefully some good stuff can come from that. Everett's own Pallet Shelter won the National League of Cities Capstone Challenge for innovative solutions to problems that folks are experiencing. So congratulations to Pallet for all of the great work that they're doing, not just in Puget Sound region, but across the whole nation. And I was pleased to hear as well that the conference last year, a connection that I had made with folks in Lawrence, Kansas, helped to lead to their purchasing 100 pallet shelters for their very first pallet shelter in Lawrence. So good things happening from the conference, and just glad to be a part of it. And just I wanted to share just a quick, probably not quick, a general commentary just about being in DC in general and just the thriving metropolis and how intentional they are about pedestrian and bike infrastructure and safety. It was great to see how few storefronts were were vacant and just general, lots of foot traffic downtown. So it was really exciting, and I look forward to bringing just some of that inspiration from just being in a thriving metropolis to the work with our quality of life committee so that we can work on the intentionality of filling in storefronts downtown to lead to more foot traffic downtown and just revitalizing and bolstering our downtown commerce. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice President Tui.
Yeah, I attended the Council of Neighborhoods, my new liaison assignment for this year, and had a great meeting on Monday. They have 4 hybrid meetings coming up in April, June, September, and November. If you want to be in person, you attend at the Weyerhaeuser Room. 2 events this month. One at the Clark Park is having an event April 8th as they try to activate their park and keep it very safe and busy. And then there's a plant swap. It's free. You just bring a plant and you can have one at 22nd and Grand between the Pea Patch and the Bayside Park, and that's April 22nd. So those were 2 good things there. And I just wanted to make a comment. I was gone, and I was so sad to hear about Officer House's injury while on duty, and wish him the best. But I also want to just thank our first responders for taking such good care and putting their lives in jeopardy almost every day. It could be. Thank them for and appreciate their hard work, and thank you, Dan, and your team. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Fosse.
I'll be quick with my comments tonight. I just wanted to, again, extend a warm welcome to our new officers. That's very exciting, having more amazing people willing to protect and serve in our community. And I wanted to second an enthusiastic support for the plant swap. Participated in that before, and it is a lot of fun. So don't miss that one. And I'll send a appreciation to my neighborhood for their advocacy recently on replacement of ADA ramps. So that is all I have tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the Everett Police Department. When there's an injury to one, there's an injury to all. And it's very heartfelt to see the department rally around a family, and that's really what we are here in the city of Everett. And when new recruits come by, say welcome to the family, and I think that's just projected out through all our departments, and it's reflected in the police department. So I just want to acknowledge that, and thank you, Chief, for your leadership in that. Try not to pile on too much. I also attended the National League of Cities. And I'll just add a little bit more to Councilman Ryan's statements. I followed a little bit more of the public safety tracks, because they have different tracks, different programs. And so when you have cities represented from all 50 states all over the country, and the subject is public safety, we're not alone in the challenges. There are very, very similar challenges that other cities, comparable size, that are facing. So I appreciate the opportunity to have a dialogue with them. Just to add on to some of the programs, potential grants, there's a lot of emphasis on supporting youth and youth violence. And so I know there's a lot of resources out there, so they're really promoting that this year. The last meeting I was attending really important regional committee. It's called Snohomish County Tomorrow. And I'll just try to make it brief. But in last year's legislature, they House Bill 1220, which amended the Growth Management Act, which is a guideline for our community to plan for future population growth. And the Department of Commerce is coming up with a formula to assist the county and our city in integrating basically the 5 levels of affordability housing. And so that's it in a nutshell. It goes much more in depth, but they'll be presenting. They're real close. I know this is more to have to do with the mayor's staff. They will be presenting their program, and so your staff will get a chance to look at it and have a say in it. So that was 4 hours of meeting in the 5 minutes. But I'm confident that the Department of Commerce is working on a good structure. And for those watching and in attendance here, the state and county and the city, we're all trying to work really hard together and integrate some sort of growth plans to accommodate the need for housing. And so this is just going to be another tool that we'll be able to use. That's all, thank you.
Councilmember Schwab, do you want to mention the committee meeting that you chaired right before this meeting, just for public interest?
Oh, yeah, yeah, thank you. There's a lot. I was going to try to take the whole meeting tonight. Yeah, we did have a Safe Communities Committee meeting today, prior, and there were several things on the agenda. So we talked briefly about three main issues. One is creating a safe buffer zone around some of our service providing for homeless. We also looked at the process that it takes to transfer a patient at the hospital from our ambulances or what we call our medic units. Sometimes our medic units are delayed and we keep a patient there for a period of time. Also, the police department also, when they do some transporting of some patients, believe it or not. And so we talked a lot about that really a big concern for us is not only just the care of the patients, but the amount of time it takes for our emergency personnel away from other duties. When we're standing by the hospital for basically to transfer a patient, that takes away time that they could be responding to other calls. So we had a large discussion over that. And so looks like we're going to be looking at two different ordinances coming up. And I think we're going to put them together. The third one was the idea of creating an incentive or a penalty for the use of open substances in our public spaces. Both that and creating a buffer zone around some of our service facilities. It's not a new idea. There are other cities that have adopted it and have had some success with it. And really the point of it is that we're trying to create a safe area for those that use the facilities, and that also give our law enforcement an additional tool so that we can encourage people to get treatment. So really the focus is on safety and treatment. So, thanks.
Sorry, Councilmember Vogely.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you to the new officers, of course, for joining the team. I also attended National League of Cities, and I found that a common theme at the conference was the fact that the federal government, through the bipartisan infrastructure bill and ARPA grants, has made available much more money than in any recent time in American history. The consensus at the NLC is that the money is there, but the workers needed to perform the improvements haven't been trained up yet. Because the education focus in America the past couple of generations has been for four-year colleges for everyone, but that was a mistake, and we should have been encouraging trades and skills centers. There will now be a push for jobs that make good money and build up our communities physically. In other words, expand workforce development. I'm sure Councilmember Ryan is put the spin much better than I am right now, but this is where I am right now. The 5-year infrastructure bill will fund shovel-ready and shovel-worthy projects, reducing fatalities, hopefully, in the transportation system, resilient infrastructure investments, increasing services for underserved communities, and multimodal transportation, and like many, many other things. What I did not hear at this conference was anything about a more evenly distributed tax system. So while we as elected officials are working to build the workforce, incentivize housing development, make it safer for the community to get around on the ground or in the air, the majority of Americans will still be fighting for the last bootstrap to pull themselves up to the level where they make enough money to pay obscenely low taxes. Opioid and fentanyl deaths were a major topic, as well as critical incident response teams and alternative response teams with social workers and/or plainclothes cops. The cops office director of U.S. Department of Justice, I don't think I got that exactly right, but the cops director, he was a very powerful speaker, as well as Marcia Fudge, the secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. I went to the, I don't remember what it's called right now because it was a last-minute addition, but some legal cases at the Supreme Court that are being looked at heavily are about EPA and emissions and being able to count emissions a certain way. We can get into that more later if you want, as well as free speech for small businesses, much like the cake court case of a few years ago. And finally, First Lady Jill Biden took a moment out of her speech to notify the NLC attendees, which were like over 3,000, of the school shooting in Tennessee. And I would like to remind everybody that gun violence is preventable, and Guns N' Roses should be a rock band and not a regular state of affairs. Thank you.
Thank you. We go to administrative update. Do we have an administrative update?
I'd just like to remind the listening audience that all of our council committee meetings are available. They're recorded and online at the Agenda Center, including the Safe Community meeting that was earlier.
Wonderful, thank
That's
you.
it.
And City Attorney Hall, what do you have for us this evening?
There is no report from the legal department. We are requesting a 20-minute executive session to discuss 2 litigation matters pursuant to RCW 4231-10-1I with potential council action to follow on both matters.
Thank you. Move to our consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the 3 consent items?
Councilmember Ryan moves approval of the 3 consent agenda items.
Councilmember Tui seconds the motion.
Thank you. Motion and a second on the consent agenda. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Vice President Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. We have one proposed action item, which is a second reading, has already been read into the record. Do we have any comments or questions on the proposed action item number 4 before it will come to council at a future meeting? Seeing none, we'll move to our action agenda. Item 5, Council Bill 2302-15, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled WFP Phase 2 Capital Upgrades, Fund 336, Program 021, and repealing ordinance number 3870-22. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Vice President Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Item 6, Council Bill 2302-16, third and final reading. Adopt the ordinance creating Department 030 in the general fund entitled Emergency Management. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Vice President Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Item 7, adopt a resolution concurring with staff recommendation and authorizing the mayor to implement the next steps for ARPA-funded projects and initiatives listed in the resolution recital C. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Councilmember Schwab, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. I had a question about the proposed, the staff person. So I know we talked a little bit last week about how it would be an FTE. So I'm curious if it's a 40-hour a week, if it's contract-based, based off of how much work's available for them to do. And if there's somebody right now that's already doing 40 hours a week, it sounds like just want to make sure that the workload is appropriate for the ask, I guess.
Hi, Julie Willie, Community Development Director, and thank you for asking for that clarification. The resolution gives us the permission to move forward to then articulate what the actual job description would be and what the actual job would be, when it would start, how many hours per week, what the actual needs are from both our finance department, our procurement department, and my team that does some of the compliance and the HUD work. And so kind of yet to be determined on all of those things.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Vogely.
I wonder if, and I don't have a great argument for it right now, but if we might increase the Everett City Council recovery grants to $100,000 per council member instead of the $75,000, and because there's still the, what, $5 million to be allocated. Haven't talked with anybody, but it's a resolution, so I don't know if it would be an amendment, or if anybody else wants to do that, but there you have it.
I think I just wanted to mention that as we looked at the estimated calculation, and I think Council President Stonecipher, we had some conversation with you as well. We looked at the county model and what we understand the county was sharing proportionately from their ARPA dollars, and so doing that formula-based, then it landed at about $75,000 per
Do you know,
council
do you
member.
have it
Is that still
somewhere?
correct, Julie?
I don't have it right off the top.
I'm going to raise my little hand first. Thank you. I also did the calculation because I was curious, and I typed it somewhere if I can find it. If I can't find it in my 83 pages of notes from NLC, but if I remember correctly, the county allocation is about 1.1 million per council member. So out of the total bucket amount, it comes out to like 3.9%. And then the city's 75,000 allocation from our total budget was closer to like 2.something%. So there was like a full percentage difference between the two amounts, and moving up to 100,000 would make it more equal to the proportion that the county's at.
Any other discussion? Do I hear a motion to amend? Is that
Yes.
what we would?
How about I move to amend this resolution, authorizing each council district to have $100,000 in ARPA funds to appropriate to a project or initiative, rather than $75,000.
Councilor Ryan seconds.
You said council district. Do you mean council members or council district?
That's a good question, and I meant members. But if you want to change it to just the 5 districts, then we can have even more per
I
district.
think you said districts.
I did.
Okay.
But I meant people, council members. So I will restate that again. $100,000 per each council member in the Everett City Council.
I second again.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to amend, providing a total of an additional 7 times 25. Yeah, $175,000 would be allocated additionally to the Everett City Council recovery grants. Any discussion on the motion to amend? Councilmember Zarlingo.
I guess before I take a position on that, I think I'd like to have background on the trade-offs on this, because we're talking about a fixed fund of money, and if it goes to here, it won't go to somewhere else. And I know there's been thinking, considerable thinking that's gone into the existing amounts. So before trying to have an informed opinion on what the trade-offs would be, I guess I'd like to understand that better. I don't object to the change, but I also don't know what the trade-offs would be.
I'll add on to that, from a process perspective then, do these, once a council member identifies a way to spend it, does that come back to council for approval?
I'm pretty sure.
Again, it will depend on the size and the scope of the project, so we'll have to follow our internal policies. And the $700,000 that will then be allocated to this project, just like any of our ARPA projects, if you don't end up using all of the money, or if we're not able to allocate it before our kind of established deadline for having to make those allocations, then it would go back into the bigger pot. So
Well,
if-
and, you know, along those lines, I've only just started to think about what these kinds of funds might be used for, might best be used for. And perhaps the time to look at a possible increment in that is once we've started to identify what those things might be, and then see what kind of trade-off there would be. And also, as someone I think mentioned when this was announced last week, do we want to do some things like combine a district and an at-large allocation, or a couple of district allocations for a larger project? So I'd be a little more comfortable myself, assuming we start with this allocation as it is, and see that as an opportunity to increase it if we feel like we want, if we feel like that's justified, if we can identify projects that we'd like to advocate for. Because I'm all for doing it if it's going to be a better spending of money. I just have no good grounds to say yay or nay at this point.
Councilmember,
I'll wait. I am vocally, but Tui can go.
Councilmember Tui, and then Councilmember
Julie,
Vogely.
in reading some of this, there were also the next potential slate of projects to use up the balance of the, I think, was there 5 million more after this? What were those projects? Do you, off the top of your head? I don't have it here, but.
Yeah, I do. We actually have sorry, we can turn on a PowerPoint quickly if we have that. If I just click that. Oh, look at that. Here we go. So that's this one. These were the remaining projects that are still under consideration. And again, they're just kind of placeholders for amounts.
Right.
They're not solidified. That represents about 4.5 million. But if I go backwards one slide, you have about 5.7 yet to spend. Adding that $175,000 would take our Q1 amount up to 1.2 million rather than 1,025,000.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we could say, you know, that the council could spend up to. It doesn't mean we have to spend that, or if, you know, we're not desperate to spend it. If we can't find, if we have a project that we have has a great fit that's 75, then we can, you know, we're not obligated to spend it all.
Especially, yes, that makes sense. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Schwab?
Yes, I mean, I did watch the last meeting. I don't think this was specifically addressed in the process, but I'm assuming administration would be very helpful in making some guidelines and some suggestions on how, and some of the needs, because you've been working on it in way more in depth on some of these potential projects.
The federal guidelines require that we meet that criteria, so we
Yeah.
want to work with you to make sure that the projects are all eligible.
Right, thanks.
Any other questions or comments before we take, Councilmember Vogely, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I
did
wanted to
call
make
on
sure
you and
everybody,
forgot.
I wanted to make sure everybody had time. So let's see, I just want to say that just like all of the other ones, what were we just talking about? The, darn it, okay, so gun buyback, we know exactly what we're doing. The other ones, like for the full-time employee, we're going to be looking at what that could be. I think having more money to look at what that could be is better than being really bummed out that we didn't have enough. So, and again, like Councilmember Tui, and I think most everybody else has said, we don't have to spend it all, but having it there will make it more useful, and then we can just say no, which is also an option. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you. I will call the roll, and this is just on the motion to amend. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Abstain.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes,
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
President Stone Cipher.
Yes. Okay, now we will take up our motion on the main menu, or the main resolution. Any questions or comments? Did I have a motion and a second on the main? Thank you, keeping me honest. And do we have any questions or comments on the amended resolution? Councilmember Ryan.
I do have just a comment real quick. Sorry, that one. So just to mention about the parking lot again, the pandemic's impacted everybody differently, and I've been ringing the bell about childcare and quality childcare and the lack of people in the pipeline for workforce development for childcare. So I'm really hoping that no matter what the county does with their allocations, we're hearing that childcare centers here in Everett are closing. The need's still going to be there, so I'm hoping that that line item moves to the top of the list for consideration for the next round. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Vogely?
Just to add on to that, another thing mentioned at the NLC was, workforce development, and in order to develop the workforce, you need childcare and so many other things, but, so childcare was a big point in that, and education from the ground up.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, I just want to thank administration for taking input last week and removing a project, at least one, from the list so that we could have some further consideration. So thank you for your flexibility. With that, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. And where are we? Item 8, adopt the resolution concerning 2023 CDBG home and AHTF fund allocations and annual action plan.
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Councilmember Tui seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Vogely?
Do you want to tell us anything more about it? Okay.
We had a great briefing at our last meeting. Any other questions or comments? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. And we'll now move on to our briefings. These items come before the City Council, serving as a council committee of the whole, and are likely to be scheduled at a future meeting. Item 9 is Council Bill 2303-19, first reading. Adopt ordinance authorizing the issuance of water and sewer revenue and refunding bonds of the city in the principal amount not to exceed $66,100,000. Third and final reading for this will be on April 12th. Hi, Susie. Susie Haugen, Finance Director, is here to brief us.
Good evening, everybody. So tonight, I will be briefing the council on our proposed water and sewer revenue bond issue. The debt service on these bonds will be paid solely from revenues generated by the city's water and sewer utility. And you may recall that during the 2023 budget process, we talked about issuing roughly $100 million this year to finance a portion of the utilities capital program. However, it now looks like the two large projects that were driving the size of that issue are a little further off in the future than was originally anticipated. So with that in mind, we downsized the issue to $66.1 million. We propose to issue these bonds via competitive sale on May 16th. There are two parts to this bond issue. The first is to bring in new money that will reimburse the utility for cash-funded projects or cash-funded capital investments that they made in 2022. This influx of cash will allow the utility to delay the bond sale for those large projects until 2025, when the Fed is projecting that interest rates will be lower than they are right now. The second is to refinance the outstanding 2013 water and sewer bonds. The actual savings on the refunding will be determined when the bonds are priced. However, an estimate generated by our financial advisors on March 15th indicated a net present value savings of more than $1 million over the existing debt service requirements. The estimated true interest costs, so the costs it takes into account issuance costs and all of those things that are involved in issuing bonds, on the combined issue is 3.59%. However, it's important to recognize that market conditions are highly dynamic right now, particularly in light of the recent bank failures. So it's difficult to predict at that time what the rates will be when the bonds are sold in May with a high level of confidence. However, they have dropped a little bit since these estimates were made. So today, things look better than they did on March 15th. We'll see what it's like in May. The current rate ordinance sets rates through 2024, and the debt service for this issue is contemplated in the existing ordinance. The utility will conduct a comprehensive water, sewer, and stormwater cost of service study in 2024 for a revised ordinance anticipated to take effect in 2025 and run through 2028. And since this is the first bonds that many of the council members have experienced on this council, I added a little bit of extra information in this briefing, just generalized about our bonds. And so there are two primary documents associated with a bond sale, and the first is the bond ordinance. Our city staff work with our bond counsel and financial advisor to compile these documents and ensure that they meet all legal requirements. The first document is the bond ordinance, which is up for first reading tonight. The bond ordinance provides the legal authority for the city to sell bonds to investors. It details information related to the bonds, such as bond registration, redemption, commitment of system revenues to debt service, bond and tax covenants, bond insurance, ongoing disclosure, and much more. The second is the official statement, which serves as the primary document that is used to sell the bonds to investors. It provides a detailed description of the terms and features of the bonds through maturity, financial details relating to the utility and the city as a whole, and a description of city leadership. Now a little bit about bond covenants. They are one of the most important elements of a bond ordinance. They provide assurance to investors that the utility will be managed and operated in a manner that will preserve its financial health as well as the assets that the bonds are financing. These covenants support the city's position in the market and ultimately contribute towards the lowest possible cost of capital, which directly benefits ratepayers. Covenants can be in the form of financial commitments and non-financial commitments that generally commit the city to operating the utility with integrity, keeping it solvent and reliable over the life of the bonds. They lean towards broad statements such as the city will maintain and operate the system, and that will establish rates that at a level that will generate sufficient resources to do that. They also require the city to insure the system and prohibit the provision of free service or waiver of connection charges. Other examples include a commitment to collect on delinquent accounts, maintain proper books of account, and to refrain from taking any action that would put the tax-exempt status of the bonds in jeopardy. That's just a sample of the key covenants in the ordinance. For a more detailed review, the covenant provisions are found starting on page 38 of the ordinance. The bond issuance schedule starts with tonight's briefing and first reading of the ordinance. In April, we have the second and third readings and adoption of the ordinance, as well as the bond rating call with Standard & Poor's. The purpose of the call is to affirm the city's AA+ credit rating for this bond issue. And just so you know, AA+ is the second highest rating possible. In May, we'll post the preliminary official statement, sell the bonds, update the official statement to the final form, and on May 25th, we'll conclude the process by taking delivery of the bond proceeds. And that concludes the information I've brought tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Zerlingo.
Let's see, the recent uncertainty in the finance markets kind of came up, died back a little bit, came back up again. I think it's likely we're on the downslope of that. I've been tracking it as much as I can, but I'm not particularly confident of that. Is there if there were to be an eruption of uncertainty again between now and that time in May, do we have the ability to pause this until that uncertainty gets resolved?
The date that we sell the bonds would be the last day we could
Okay.
pull the plug.
So if something came up during our time, that the readings of the ordinance and up to that date? Okay.
Yes.
Seems unlikely, but a lot of unlikely things have happened. The only other comment I guess I'd make is on the bond rating, I'd like to express my gratitude to Public Works and to Finance for the work that makes that bond rating so good and saves us money that we'd otherwise spend if we weren't as skilled and responsible. So thank you to both you and Ryan and your departments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Susie? Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate the hard work you guys are doing. To echo that, I guess in essence, we're selling $66 million in bonds.
Mhm.
And then we're just going to refund, we're going to purchase new ones, half of that? Or we're going to use the money, and then half of the other money, we're going to buy bonds later in the future? I'm just trying to do it in simple terms.
Certainly. Are you referring back to the original $100 million estimate?
Yeah.
Yes. We downsized the issue because we do have spend down requirements for bonds. And it didn't look like those two very large projects that were really driving that $100 million were far enough along to where we would be able to consume the amount of cash by that time. So by issuing these bonds now, we have not only the savings that we'll realize from refinancing the 2013 bonds, which looks like it's going to be at least $1 million, but we're also bringing in some new money, $29 million and change on that to essentially we're repaying ourselves for cash-funded investments that we made in 2022, which pumps up the cash balance of the utility, and they can continue to fund projects going forward until 2025 without taking down that whole $100 million plus today.
Thank you.
Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you again, and it's really nice to see you. It's been way too long. The 100 million that Councilmember Schwab just mentioned, and now we're 66, and that was because of two projects that we just aren't far enough along on. Are those two projects listed somewhere? Like, I'm imagining when I hear project and public works, I think of PLAs and lots of, stuff to be done, and all of these things run through my head, and if two projects aren't viable, or not viable, but just not worked on enough yet, means they're coming up in the future, and which ones were they?
So those projects are not in these documents because we're not financing them
Right.
through this bond issue. And I'm afraid that I don't know exactly the names of those two large projects, so I am going to have to turn to Ryan.
I bet Ryan knows.
To remind me.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ryan Sass with Public Works. There are two or actually three projects that have slipped a little in terms of scheduling, and part of that, if you recall, when we did our midterm rate adjustment, we contracted our capital program a little bit so that we didn't have to increase our rates as much at the midterm. In particular, the Edgewater Bridge replacement, which is scheduled to start this summer, was originally scheduled for last summer. We were slowed down a little bit in terms of getting all of our stuff through with the state. And then following that project, we have the Maryland Ring Creek Bridge replacement, which will follow on behind Edgewater. And then the other project related to this will be the Port Gardner Storage Facility, which is also continuing to progress.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? And I have none. Susie, thank you very much for that excellent briefing. We
Thank
will
you.
See you back on the 12th, it sounds like, to adopt the ordinance.
Yes. And next week for budget amendment number 1.
Yes.
You'll be seeing me, a lot of me
yes.
for the
Oh.
next couple of weeks. so. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 10, briefing Council Bill 2303-18. First reading, adopt an ordinance criminalizing the intentional obstruction of a city public works worker engaging in the employee's official duties, amending Chapter 10.12 of the Everett Municipal Code. Third and final reading will be on April 12th. And good evening, Ryan.
Hello again. As you all are very well aware, public safety is a substantial part of our Everett Public Works mission. Our team is responsible for 24/7 operations of our public water system that supplies water to 640,000 Snohomish County and Everett residents, as well as taking care of our transportation infrastructure and our public right-of-way. So public safety is a very significant part of our role, and I'd like to introduce Grant Moen, who is our maintenance superintendent and assistant public works director, and he's had the opportunity to work together with legal and police on this issue. And we also have Hill Kamen from the legal department here as well in support.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having me. Like Ryan said, I am Grant Moen. There we go. Just had to click the button a few more times. So my name is Grant Moen, and Assistant Public Works Director and Maintenance Superintendent, and Hill Kamen is with me, and we're here to present a draft proposed ordinance for obstruction of a public works worker. This ordinance was actually put together by another member of the legal staff who is not able to be here for this presentation today, but we'll be covering it. It would add the proposed section 10.12.185 to Everett Municipal Code, and that would be specifying that a person commits an offense if they intentionally use or threaten to use force to obstruct someone who is a city public works worker acting in their official duties. As Ryan briefly touched on, public works does cover a wide range of duties, definitely vital to public health and safety of the environment, from transportation systems, drinking water system, wastewater, stormwater, and cleaning right-of-ways. During those activities, public works staff are brought into contact with many members of the public, many interactions, definitely the vast majority of those interactions being very positive, very cordial and positive interactions. However, there are times where there are challenging interactions, where there are potentially confrontational or difficult interactions that do cause staff to have to stop projects or otherwise hinder staff in their duties. Some examples of that include times when a member of the public might come onto a construction site and the operator, the people that were there working on the project have to close down the construction site because it's no longer safe. It's not a safe environment for someone of the public to be walking into. That obviously delays and it can become a challenge and a safety hazard at that time. Some specific examples include within the last year, we actually had some staff that were working on a detention pond, cutting some vegetation, doing some maintenance, and a member of the staff drove up to the site, started telling them that they felt that those were environmentally sensitive plants, that they shouldn't be cutting those, and ultimately when that individual went to drive away, they actually crashed into the Public Works vehicle that was parked at the site. No members of Public Works were in the vehicle at the time, but there was obviously damage, and it was not a good situation. Another example was actually a month after that, we had an individual that ended up using their vehicle to crash into the gate that was locked, securing our Reservoir 6, one of our drinking water reservoirs, and rammed that gate and left it inoperable. Additionally, just within the last couple of months, we actually had another member of the public, come forward onto a job site, and when a public works worker asked them to leave, they actually, brandished some bear spray and pointed it at the public works employee. They were able to be, de-escalated, and ultimately was not discharged. But those are some specific examples, and just general examples. There are definitely times where Public Works needs to access water valves or other facilities for inspection or response. As Ryan mentioned, it's a 24/7 operation as far as responding in the middle of the night to events, things of that nature. And at times, we've been denied access to those locations, whether that be with a vehicle parked on top of a valve, whether that be locked gates or animals not being controlled or things of that nature that hinders our response. And at times, some of those events, whether they be water main breaks or sewer spills or other instances, even just debris or material in right-of-ways, up against traffic devices, the timeliness of public works response can lead to potential significant impacts to public health, to the environment, to property damage. The ability to respond quickly is definitely something that is apparent. There are several other obstruction of different staff ordinances on the books that are already in Everett Municipal Code. This is a selection of several of them. Some of these have had very few cases that have actually come forward, into the legal, move forward to have legal action. However, having those on the books does allow for a certain level of just understanding of the importance of the work, and also an ability to communicate what the potential consequences are of inhibiting or stopping or blocking that work. And so this would add an additional section for public works workers in addition to what is already in Everett Municipal Code. The goals with this ordinance, really are to really communicate to public when there is a confrontation, when there is a challenging situation that comes forward, to be able to better communicate to that individual the need for them to leave and potential consequences of them not leaving. Not only if it's a time-sensitive issue, like I mentioned, some of the issues that come forward with safety, but also have there also be the potential for the citation. We do have obviously work with our police department and legal to help to support Public Works in our mission. And this would allow those departments to have additional resources and ability to support Public Works. And I wanted to ask Hill to come forward and maybe talk on that last bullet and that piece of how legal and police can help with this as well.
Yeah. I'll just speak from here and add that this ordinance would not be used in lieu of any civil rights or remedies that somebody might have under the law. Like with all of our other obstructing ordinances that are on the books, if someone has a right to not have someone come to their home, or a right in terms of, this is more of a code enforcement situation, that those are still in place. What this ordinance addresses is the violent, hostile situations in the context of something that is time sensitive and puts our city employees at risk.
And that's the end of the presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Lots of questions. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you for your presentation. Nice to meet you both as well. So I noticed in the draft, employee has been crossed out and replaced with workers, and there's also language added to include contractors performing vital tasks through the city. So I'm curious just how far down this goes, I guess. So does it include subcontractors? Is it just Public Works employees and contractors, or is it also subcontractors, or basically anybody who's working on a City of Everett Public Works project? Would they be included and protected through this?
I'm going to take that one?
Sure.
So you actually got a track changes copy of this and honed in on the edits to include somebody who might be hired by Public Works. It would go down to anyone who is contracted to perform work on a City of Everett project. So if they are a flagger on a construction project and they are subject to the kinds of threats and harassment that this ordinance would cover, then it would fall under the ordinance because they're acting in their capacity on a City of Everett project. Adding workers was just was more of just a, trying to be comprehensive in who covers that. And we believe that just having the salaried employees didn't fully cover the kinds of work that Public Works does, the fact that they regularly rely on contractors to do much of the work, and that we're asking them to go in these same situations and potentially, risk that kind of hostile interaction.
So in the current draft, then, would subcontractors be covered even though they're not specifically mentioned?
I believe that they would be covered as contractors because that contractor is using them for a City of Everett project.
Okay, I just want to make sure everybody gets equal protection.
Yep.
And I'm also curious, I'm not sure who this question's for, but like it's on the slide, law enforcement, watershed patrol, animal control, park ranger, and sealers and deputy sealers are covered by obstruction laws. So is maybe not this ordinance specifically, but are we missing anybody that should also be covered, like our firefighters, our library workers, code enforcement, or are there other sections that do protect them? Who wants that?
Well, no, I would say that, first of all, everyone who lives in this community, everyone who works for the city is covered by the breadth of criminal laws that we have that protect against harassment and assault, trespasses, intimidation. So we have a lot of tools that already exist. Certainly, if any of those workers, if there was a pattern of behaviors and they brought that to legal and said, we feel like, we're in situations and we're not safe, is there something we could do? We would look at that. This was a collaboration, given the specific interactions that Public Works has, particularly in the last, I'd say, 5 years, where they have been heavily involved in encampment cleanups. Also, some of the, unfortunately, interactions with community members have become more hostile over those 5 years, and they have some unique duties that put them in contact with people, as Grant explained, having to do water shutoffs, having to go to people's homes in the middle of the night to address, maybe what might be a utility, something that needs to be fixed right away, having to do inspections on people's homes where people maybe not cooperative. Those are all situations where there's the potential for an interaction that could be negative. And so this is something that I think Public Works has a lot more of those kinds of interactions that necessitated bringing something specific to that scope of work. But it doesn't preclude, were there examples of that, we could look at those individually within the code.
Sure, yeah, and I'm clear on what the scope of this is and what protections are included. My question is more general, if there's opportunities to protect more City of Everett workers, if there's gaps elsewhere in our code that aren't covering our library workers who also deal with hostile work situations at times in the library. So just as a general comment, if there is an opportunity for a separate ordinance or other work to make sure that all of our workers are taken care of, I think that'd be great.
Yep.
Other questions? Councilmember Vogely.
So is this a brand-new ordinance? Because seeing all of the employees turned into workers makes me think that it's already on the books, you're just changing the words? Or is this just brand-new Public Works workers?
It's brand new.
Yeah, and it was in error that the track changes version was posted online, so to apologize for the confusion, to make it look like it was an amended ordinance.
And to add on to that, and having, maybe there should then be a definitions, so that we are not confused by workers, and I know that we contract with the DOJ and have folks on work release working for Public Works and cleaning up encampments and all of that, at least we did a few years ago. So this is an ordinance, you have a couple more tries before it's branded yes.
Well, on section 1, paragraph 3, and this actually gets to Councilmember Ryan, city public works worker means an employee of the City of Everett Public Works Department or an employee of a contractor or a subcontractor providing construction, maintenance, engineering, or other service to the City of Everett Public Works Department. So it's defined in this draft, and it does specifically call out subcontractors.
Well, good, all right. And that would include the DOJ, I imagine, because they're subcontractors or contractors. Great. Thanks.
Councilmember Zerlingo.
I don't know that it's the majority of these things, but I can imagine some of these situations happen when there are property rights concerns and questions about that. Is there anything that we have that's a handout or an explanation that a public works worker could use before, say, calling in the police for help so that they could explain to somebody, hey, this is something that the city has a right and an obligation to do, and you have an obligation to let this employee do their job?
We do have some materials that, for instance, our transmission line right-of-ways, we actually proactively, on an annual basis, will send out flyers to folks just to let them know that we're in that location. When it comes to easements within the city, for some of these facilities, there are routine inspections, and so if people are used to seeing, or should be used to, or, obviously a new property owner might not be, but in some cases, they would be used to seeing people come through and do inspections. We do have a JS program that our staff have on mobile devices, and so they can show people, with the facilities and things of that nature out on the site. But you're right that, in some of these cases where it's easements or things of that nature in someone's, backyard or things that, in certain situations, it is challenging for folks to understand where all the different locations that the pipes are going.
Yeah, and I offer this only as a suggestion, and partly my experience in water law and properties where new owners will buy properties and not understand that there is an easement that's maybe been there for a century and certain rights and obligations on the part of those holding the easement. Also, at least once in my experience, the easement was in the wrong, the as-built of the easement was in the wrong place, which caused some confusion. But again, just a suggestion, but it might be nice if you had a card or a sheet of paper where you could hand somebody to say, as a property owner, I know you may not understand this, but there are existing easements, and we're doing this for serving the public, and if need be, we'll resolve this with the police or something like that. But again, a suggestion, you guys face this stuff every day, and I don't, but in case that's useful, it might defuse a few of those situations from people who are just misinformed.
Thank you.
And there is some written material that is provided during encampment cleanups that explain to people what the process is and what they can expect when the cleanup will occur, and that's all in our encampment cleanup policy.
Yeah, I think that's a case where it's more explicitly known that, these people, people who are involved may not know what the situation is and what the obligations and rights are, but I can imagine in terms of properties, if it's not something like an easement or something, or a new owner, that they may just be completely clueless about something that's been buried in their property since long before they owned it. So thank you.
Thank you, and I'll just ask, it's obviously, we have to protect our workers. I can't believe that we have these kinds of situations come up. But maybe I don't understand the legal maneuverings of all this, but why do we have to have separate laws related to this? Don't we have laws on the books that would allow us to access, for example, if there's an easement? Or is that just kind of a drawn-out process that doesn't penalize the person who's actually stopping us from accessing our easement?
There are, as I said, civil remedies that would be available in those cases where Public Works needs to take some action, but the landowner has some rights that they want to exert, and then we would go through either a code enforcement or maybe even some sort of civil suit. The situations that this address are where a person is engaging in threats or acts of violence specifically for somebody who's engaged in the course of their work conduct. And so that is sort of unique to, this. It doesn't exist on our books for public works employees. It does exist, as we pointed out, for other city employees that have some similar duties, park rangers, animal control officers, watershed, those kinds of city employees.
And I might just add that it also, some of those civil processes might take a longer time, whereas some of these situations might be more real time dependent and kind of urgent for our response. And so that's another thing that this addresses.
Yeah, I understand that. So if someone was, to Councilmember Ryan's comment, if someone at the library is being, assaulted or sort of threatened, there are laws that we can use to stop that from happening, even if we didn't have them called out with a special law like this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
I want you to preface this with, this is not towards you or you. This is life in general. And what I am hearing is a lot of, well, the landowner could be obnoxious. And what I'm not hearing, well, what I'm reading between the lines is the people that are not landowners don't have so much of a civil response or law protection, whether or not, because they don't have easements, they're using our land, which isn't really ours anyways, but we can go into that on a whole nother level. So people are getting their stuff cleaned up, taken away, thrown away, and we already can jail them probably with the no sit, no lie and other forms of laws in this city and this country. So that's what I'm hearing. And you really don't even have to respond. I'm just I have a lot of words about this. And so therefore also, if public works people that are working, contractors, employees, why don't we just strike all of these very particular park rangers, dog whatevers, and say every single city employee and contractor and subcontractor has this, because there are hostile people everywhere. And there's also really nice people. And sometimes really nice people turn hostile, like me. And so having it just for public works, and I think specifically for folks that are getting all of their stuff thrown away because they don't have a place to go to the bathroom or put it, makes it difficult for me to understand why the librarians aren't having it. So that would be my my political preference is to cover all of the city employees or none of them, because there's already laws, so why are we special protecting? That's what I have about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Any other questions or comments from you, Grant? I think we did have one person that was signed up to speak on this or ask a question.
Mary, would you like to do public comment? Okay.
Thank you.
Please state your full name, city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Mary Rollins, City of Everett, District 2. I got up because I wasn't sure that my questions would have been answered or even asked. But I wanted to thank the council members for asking the questions that I was going to ask. And I'm sorry that we got that copy online that was kind of confusing, because that was one of my questions. Why employee, why worker? But the other thing I wanted to say is I also feel very strongly about the library staff, about the DOJ workers, about even people that do planning site visits for the planning department, because they're going out on these properties as well. I'm not saying it's a dense subject, And we do need to protect everybody, including the citizenry and the people that work for the city or on behalf of the city. I just worry that we cannot incarcerate our way out of civility. We just can't. And as you go through this process in the next 2 readings, just really think about making very clear about what this is asking. And I understand the timing of it. You know, these things, we have to do this now, because otherwise, 5,000 people won't have their water tomorrow. I can hear that. But I also hear if a library worker is being accosted now and people are not held accountable to the extent that these folks are, then that could be a problem as well. Because as we know, when people are not held accountable, they feel free to continue the abuse. So that's all I had to say today. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mary.
Council President Stone Seifer, I just wanted to add, and Hill may want to add as well, I think that perhaps there was a misunderstanding that our other workers have protections. We have exclusions that we can do within our library system. Certainly, the individuals who patronize the library are held to all of the laws that are already on the books and the requirements. And so I do think there's a unique element to the public works employees that wasn't yet addressed through our EMCs. And so it's a little bit different than a wholesale, we need to put this in place for every city employee, but you can probably speak to that better than I can.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think because of the specific tasks that they're required, like, for example, having to go onto someone's property to shut off their water, they're put in a situation where they have a legal obligation to not provide, that has already been through a process, of attempting to, get that person to pay. There's been a lot of work, and now they're basically in an enforcement role as a civilian worker for the city, not a commissioned officer. And I take seriously the safety of everybody, and we want to enforce the laws and make sure the protections are in place. This ordinance came out of specific examples that were coming to us where these specific staff, because of the nature of their jobs, were in situations that they didn't feel that they had the tools. And I think Grant said something in his PowerPoint that this is also something that can be used, not that they're going to make an arrest, but that they can inform people, hey, there is this crime. If you obstruct us, if you threaten us, that's actually a crime. People may not know that. That in and of itself may be enough for somebody to say, I'm really pissed that my water's getting shut off today, but you know what? I'm going to put my baseball bat down now and let you carry on, and I'll go deal with this in the morning. At least as far as, my experience looking at hundreds of trespass cases, assault cases, stemming from all parts of the city, from transit, the library, our current laws are in place protecting those other workers. As I said before, if there's a specific instance, we would address that. I think it might be too broad of a law to say all city employees, because the city employs so many different types of employees that are engaged in so many different aspects of work that engage with the public in unique ways, that an ordinance like this, if it's going to be criminally enforced, needs to have the specifics and justified by the rationales that we lay out in the whereases in this ordinance. And so I certainly take all those concerns seriously, but I do believe that this ordinance, we'd recommend it go forward as is without broadening to all city employees, and that doesn't preclude something in the future that could come forth.
Yeah, and I am understanding the difference now. Thank you for that, Hill. I'm understanding the difference is that we are essentially trespassing on others' property a lot of times when we are in public works or using easements that might be confused for someone else's property, even though we have the right to be there, which is a little bit different and harder to control than, for example, who's in the library and harassing our librarians, where you can easily call 911 and say, you know, you need to come here and take care of this person. So I appreciate that, that difference.
And the library we've worked with them to have, they have the power of exclusion from their building. They have security staff that has worked to develop some of their own safety protocols. So I think we have worked individually with departments to address specific safety concerns that they have.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Councilmember Ryan, Councilmember Vogeley.
Great. If I may request, so by the next meeting, if we could get a list of how our firefighters are protected, our code enforcement teams protected, and any other employee that also goes on to outside properties, just to make sure that, because that seems like it would be within the scope of what the ordinance is trying to address, which I totally support. I just want to make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind. Thank you.
Councilmember Vogeley.
Never mind. Thank you.
Councilmember Zerlingo.
It sounds like so far you've tailored this relatively narrowly to the cases where there is a special circumstance, an urgency, a public hazard, or a public risk, and that your intent is to go forward where we need it, and that if we need to revise this or broaden it later, we can. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Hill. This brings us to the end of our regular agenda. We are now going to go into executive session, which is expected to last 20 minutes with a possible action to follow. We may. Oh, yes, I am. This is Council President Stonecipher. The council is still in executive session, and we would like to extend for 10 more minutes. As Everett City Council is back from executive session, and I will call on our city attorney, Mr. Hall.
Thank you. We are hoping, Council President, that you will ask for a motion to authorize the mayor to execute a settlement agreement with Endurus, which is an insurance pool on behalf of their claimant, the Snohomish Health District. This case involves a malfunctioning city irrigation system that caused water damage to the Health District building on Rucker. The amount is $70,000, which our adjuster feels is a very reasonable amount, and so we're hoping for a motion to approve that settlement.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion
So
to
moved.
approve? Thank you. And a second?
Councilmember Schwab, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the settlement. Do I have any questions or comments? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Vice President Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes, and with no further business, we are now adjourned.